6.4 nth roots. We're going to be simplifying a whole bunch of radicals, so get your calculators ready. Let's go. All right, first thing we want to do is we want to know a whole bunch of square roots. And you need to memorize, like, the square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3, 16, 25, 36, 49. You know, memorize as many of these as you can. 64, 81, 100, 121, 144. All right, those are all of the numbers that you should know the square roots of. All right, so hopefully you just know those numbers. The rest of these you probably don't know nearly as many, but I would say if you knew all the first 12 square roots, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Okay, so we know the square roots of all of those numbers. Now, cube roots, 3. It means something times itself times itself. All right, so if you think about it, we can work this backwards to figure out the cube roots, but 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. So that means the cube root of 1 is 1. You go to the next number, 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Cube root of 27. Cube root of 27 is 3. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. I don't really expect you to memorize a whole bunch of these, but the more you just know, the better. You'll be faster at it, okay? 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. And honestly, if you go any higher than that, you're probably using a calculator. I don't really expect you to memorize anything higher than that, but those come up, I don't know, sometimes. So now let's look at fourth roots. And again, the higher you go, the less often you see them. You hardly ever see fourth, fifth, and sixth roots. But fourth root, 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Very good. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 81. And I think 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is 256. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 is 625. Hardly ever see anything bigger than that. So let's go to the fifth roots. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. Ugh. Well, that's just 1. Right? 1. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. All you have to do is take 16 times 2, because I've already done it 4 times. Take that times 2 again, you get 32. The fifth root of 32 is 5. 81 times 3 is 243. The fifth root of 243 is 3. I don't think you'll go any higher than that. I really don't. Okay, sixth root, ugh, I don't even know. So sixth root of 1 is 1. That's easy. Sixth root of, I guess, 64. I really don't think we're going to need to go much higher than that. Okay. So again, if you learned higher than that, that's great. But I'm not saying you have to memorize this, but now you've got a chart on the back of your paper, which might come in handy for these problems. Okay. We're doing very similar to what we did in the last lesson. We're trying to simplify square roots and cube roots, and we're not on the front yet. We're still doing some extra examples on the back. The thing that makes today's lesson harder than the last one is the numbers don't come out even. And so that's going to be a problem. So you won't believe this, but the letters, the variables, are actually the easy part today. The variables today are going to act exactly the same as the way they did last time. All right, so if I look at problem number 1 and I want to do the square root of r to the 4th, remember a square root has a little root 2 right there. You're taking 2, goes into the 4 twice evenly. So I know the number, or the variable part is going to be r squared. That's the easy part for this one. But the hard part is square root of 192. I don't know the square root of 192. All right. And so what you're going to have to do for the square root of 192 is figure out which one of these square roots go into 192. All right. And so one of these red square root numbers, maybe more, are going to go into or divide into 192. All right. So the hard part of today's lesson is going to be splitting it up. So what were the square roots? 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64. That's 8 9s, 81, 100. Okay, so those are the square roots from your chart, right? You already have that list. But what I would do is I would take out my calculator and I just try to kind of guess and see what divides into 192. So you can pretty quickly see some of them that won't work, like 100 or 25. Those obviously aren't going to work, but maybe 64, maybe. So what I would do is say 192 divided by 64 and just see if that goes in evenly. Okay, perfect. 64 goes into 192 evenly. All right, and so instead of thinking about this as 192, I would think about this as 64 times 3, like this. So we did this yesterday with the variables. Sometimes something comes out and stuff has to remain in, right? And so in this case, I know the square root of 64 because it's on my list. What's the square root of 64? 8. The square root of 64 is 8, right? But I don't know the square root of 3. It's not in my list, so that's going to have to remain inside the square root. So we know that's going to be an 8, so the 8 comes out, but the square root of 3 has to stay in. That's the answer. Okay, pretty tough. Pretty tough. So number 2 says square root of 294. There's no variables this time, all right? But 294 is not one of my numbers. I don't know the square root of 294. And I mean, you can try it. You can say square root of 294 and figure out that it's about 17.1, but I don't want about. I don't want a decimal number. We're not using the calculator to just type it in. We might use a calculator to try to simplify it. So, you know, what are my numbers here? Don't forget about 121 and 144. You kind of look and you can tell some of them don't go into to 294, but I don't know, maybe 64. 294 divided by 64 doesn't go in evenly, so it doesn't work. Okay, so don't use 64. 81. 294 divided by 81. No, that's no good. No, kind of tough. 36. 294 divided by 36. Nope, not that one. 294 divided by 16. Nope. 294 divided by 4. Oh my gosh, what goes into this? So what have I tried? What have I not tried? 49? How about 49? 294 divided by 49. Ah, there we go. There we go. It's 49 times 6. 294 is 49 times 6. So what I can do is I can say this is 49 times 6, like this. Square root of 49 times square root of 6. Okay? I'm splitting it up into something that I know and something that I don't. So square root of 49 is 7. I get 7 times the square root of 6. Okay? Number 3. Usually those numbers aren't that hard. So again, the letters I think is the easy part because the letters you just do what we did yesterday. So number 3 is a square root. So if you look at the letters, if you want to do those first, 2 goes into the 4. twice, evenly. So a squared comes out. 2 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. So that's just going to be a remainder. That's going to stay in. 2 goes into the 2 one time evenly, so one of the c's comes out. The variables act exactly the same as what they did yesterday. You got some stuff that comes out, some stuff that has to remain. Now your 24, we don't know the square root of 24. You can try the square root of 24, but you're going to see a decimal. It doesn't work out. We don't want that. I don't want a decimal. I want an exact. And so what you want to do is you want to look at these numbers in this list, in this square root list, and see what can go into 24. Don't do 12 times 2. We're trying to split it up, but 12 and 2 are stupid because they're not in my list. I don't know those square roots. I have to use something in my list. How about 4? Sometimes you can do this in your head and say, well, that's 4 times 6. And so square root of 24 equals square root of 4 times square root of 6. I know the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2, so that's going to come out. Square root of 6 has to stay in. So usually you put the number in front of the letter, so I should have written it like that. Square root of 6b. Let me rewrite. 2a squared c times the square root of 6b. That would be your answer. Okay, kind of tricky. Number 4. It always bothers me that people don't know the square root of 100, but you should know the square root of 100. Square root of 100 is in my list. What's the square root of 100? 10, right? Okay, so, I don't have to do the hard part of this one. I just know it's 10. Square root of 100 is 10. If it's easy, it's easy. Okay, don't make it harder than it needs to be. What's the square root of m to the 4th? Square root of m to the 4th is m squared. What's the square root of n to the 4th? N squared. Square root of p to the 4th, p squared. 2 goes into 4 twice, so 2 comes out evenly. Nothing remains. There's nothing remaining. That's a perfect square right there. So then I look at number 5. Okay. Number 5 here. Square root of 448, x squared, y squared, z. So again, I say the variable part's the easy part. People don't like to agree with me on that, but 2 goes into 2 once, so 1 comes out. 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 goes into once. No, it doesn't, so there's going to be a z inside the square root. We can do the letters the same as what we did yesterday. It's that number that's hard, okay? And so that number is kind of hard. You have to figure out what goes into 448, all right? Now, our list was 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144. It's kind of hard sometimes. The fastest thing to do is just to kind of guess the right one. But if you can't guess the right one, I've got a different method that'll get you there. Okay. So if you don't know what goes in and you don't want to just kind of guess at it, 448 divided by 36 doesn't work. If you don't want to guess at it, you can do this. Okay, 448. I can divide that by 2, that's 224. I can divide that by 2, that's 112. I can divide that by 2, that's 56. I can divide that by 2, that's 28. I can divide that by 2, that's 14. I can divide that by 2, that's 7. All right, so what we can do is kind of treat it like variables. So instead of 448, we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 2's. So think of it as 2 to the 6th power times 7. That's what this says right here. Okay? So forget that they're numbers and treat them like they're letters. Okay? If I had to do the square root of something to the 6th power, wouldn't 3 of them come out? 3 of them come out. So we're going to pull 2 to the third out. And then, the 2 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. That 7 has to stay in. So that's 2 to the third. Is that right? Yeah, which is 8. Okay, which is 8. So 2 to the third is 8. You get 8xy squared times the square root of 7z. And so what that means is we could have divided by 64. 448 divided by 64 should be 7. So what we could have done, if the fastest way, that's not the fastest way. The fastest way would have been to know that this is going to be 64 times 7. So if you know that, then great. If you don't know that, you can break it down like I did. All right. Number 6. I know 8's 4 times 2. Okay. 8 is 4 times 2. So square root of 4 times square root of 2 means that 2 comes out and 2 stays in. 2 comes out and 2 stays in. That's 2 times the square root of 2. All right. Now you look at the variables. Remember, it's a root 2. So 2 goes into 3 how many times? Once, with 1 left over. So 1 comes out and 1 stays in. How about 2 goes into the b? Well, once, so 1 comes out. That's it. Okay. All right, so let's do a higher power now. This is a 4th root. Okay. So 4th root's going to be a lot harder to do because we're just not as comfortable with 4th roots. All right. I don't want to do a square root of 486 anymore. I want to do a 4th root of 486. And so what that means is we need to look at these purple numbers. Instead of looking at the red numbers, we look at the purple numbers. 1, 16, 81, 256, 625. Okay. 1, 16, what were they? 64. Is that right? Did I miss one? 81. Thank you. 81, 256, 625. Okay. So we want to know what of those numbers go in. Okay. What's kind of your gut feeling? Maybe 16? 486 divided by 16. Ah, crap, that doesn't work. 81? 486 divided by 81. There we go. Okay. 81. 81 and 6. Okay, but the thing is, it's not square root of 81 times square root of 6. It's the 4th root of 81 times the 4th root of 6. And what is the 4th root? What is the 4th root of 81? 3. The 4th root of 81 is 3. So that's going to be a 3 comes out and a 6 stays in. Then we look at the letter. The letter's the easy part because all you have to do is 4 goes into 4 how many times? Once. So there's an N that comes out. There's your answer. People don't believe me, but the letters are the easy part. The variables are the easy part. Okay? You look at number 8 over there, 6 doesn't go into 5 at all. So I know that there's still going to be there's still going to be a 6th root of x to the 5th. I know that. It doesn't come out. 6 doesn't go into 5. So that's going to stay in. But the 256 is the hard part because you got to break it down using a 6th root. Okay, a 6th root. Well, I don't have very many that I know, but 64 is one of them. So I'm really hoping that it's 64. 64. So does 64 go into 256, hopefully? 256 divided by 64. Great, it does. So 6th root of 64 times the 6th root of, what was it, 4? So what was the 6th root of 64? 2. So that means a 2 comes out, and then this 4 had to stay in. All right, so I know that's tough. Let's see. Let's do one more. Let's do this number 11. Okay. Look at number 11, and then we'll go back over to the front. Okay. Look at number 11. We've got a third root of 512. Third root of 512. So your third roots are these blue ones: 1, 8, 27, 64, 125. We've got 1, 8, 27, 64, 125, that kind of stuff. All right. So we want to know what goes into 512. So you guessing 64? 64 and 8. Actually, you know what? Does 512 come out even? Because 8 is also in my list. 64 and 8 are both in my list, so I think I can do 512 to the 1/3. I bet that's, oops, I bet that comes out even. Yeah, that is itself a cube root. Okay. Remember what we can do. If you don't know what you're doing, do this. If you're stuck, do this. Okay, 512. Let's break it down. I can divide that by 2 and get 256. Use a calculator if you need to. I can divide that by 2 and I get, I don't know, what would that be? 128. 256 divided by 2 is 128. Okay, divide that by 2, and that's 64. Divide that by 2, and that's 32. Divide by 2, you get 16. Divide by 2, you get 8. Divide by 2, you get 4. Divide by 2, you get 2. So notice what you've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I do that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did I mess that up? There should be 8. But this is number 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But it's no, that's not how this works. I think I messed something up. Because there's not a remainder. It comes out even. 512 to the 1/3 power is 8. What did I do wrong? Oh, it is 9. Okay, it is 9. All right, so watch. It's 9. There are 9 2s, and yeah, I do count this one. There are 9 of them. I don't know why I had in my mind I needed 8 of them, but there are 9 of those 2s. So just rewrite this as 2 to the 9th power. Okay, and really, what you like this is what you do if you're stuck and you don't know what to do. Okay, treat it like it's a letter. Treat it exactly the same as the letter. 3 goes into 9 how many times? 3 times. So that means 3 of the 2's come out. Okay. 3 goes into this 2. No, it doesn't. That's going to stay. 3 goes into 7 twice with 1 left over. 3 goes into 5 once with 2 left over. And that's your answer. And you'll notice 2 to the 3rd equals 8. And that's what we said before. That was going to be 8. And that's where I got my 8. That's 8. And so that's your answer. Okay. Now, let's actually go back and do a couple of these examples. I think these examples will be a little bit easier. I know this is running kind of long, but this is kind of a tough lesson. Once you get it, you got it, but you got to get there first. Okay. First, make sure you pay attention to what kind of root it is. This one's a square root. Do we know the square root of 36? Awesome. That's 6. Okay. Square root is a root 2. So when you do the letters, you just take 2 into 4. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. So that has to stay in. 2 goes into 2 one time. Boom. This problem is just like yesterday because it came out even, came out nice. All right, square root of 252. Next problem, 252. Do we know that square root? We don't know that square root, okay? So you've got two choices here. You can either split it up using the list of numbers, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and so on. That's the faster way to do it. If you can do that, it's faster. But if you can't do that, what you can do is split it up. So the kind of the alternate method was this: 252 divide by 2 is 126. Divide by 2 is 63. Can't divide by 2, but I can divide by 7, and I get 9. And divide by 3, I get 3. Okay. So that's, let me just double check and make sure that's right. If I go 2 times 2 times 7 times 3 times 3, 252. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I see 1, 2 of the 2's, 2 squared. I see a 7, and I see a couple of 3's. I'm just going to treat the numbers just like the letters. The letters was the easy part anyway. Just treat it exactly like you'd treat the letters. And we've got a square root. So 2 goes into this 2 once. A 2 comes out. 2 goes into this 1. Nope, no it doesn't. So a 7 stays in. 2 goes into this 2 one time, so a 3 comes out. You've got a 2 came out and a 3 came out. That is 2 times 3 is 6. So this answer is 6 times the square root of 7. So what that tells me is 36 must have gone into 252. The faster way would have been to recognize that 36 times 7 is 252. So you could have said 36 times 7 like this to get that same answer. Okay, 125. The fastest way to do it is to know that you can just split it into square root of 25 times 5. That's the fastest thing. All right, I know 25. I know square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 25 is 5. That's the answer. 5 times that square root of 5. Right? Other than that, you could say 125. Divide by 5, I get 25. Divide by 5, I get 5. There are 3 of them, so that's 5 to the third. And if I do the square root of 5 to the third, 2 goes in once with 1 left over. That's the answer. Number 7. Quickest way, split it into 9 and 2. Don't do 6 and 3. Some people are going to split it into 6 and 3, but that's dumb because I don't know 6 and I don't know 3. I know 9 though. Square root of 9 is 3. 2 stays in. Square root of a to the fourth is a squared. 75. What goes into 75? What? No, not into 75. Keep in mind your list. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 25. A lot of times when you just look at your list, you can see it. That's 25 times 3. So I know a 5 comes out and a 3 stays in. Square root 2 goes into 3 one time, so a p comes out, but there's 1 left over, so that stays in. 2 goes into 1, no it doesn't, that stays in. 2 goes into 2 once, so that r comes out. Make sure your square root covers everything it needs to cover. Square root of 192, b to the third. Fastest way is to know what goes into 192. I'm going to guess 64. That's it, okay? Sometimes you can just kind of get a feel for it. 64 times 3, so it's square root of 64 times the square root of 3. So that means 8 comes out, 3 stays in. Don't forget you have to do that square root. The whole point of using a 64 is because I know the square root of 64 is 8. Square root of b to the third goes in one time with 1 left over. There's your answer. Cube root of 320. Cube root of 320. I think the other roots are kind of hard. So I would recommend, if you're not good at your roots, to just try to break it down. 320. Divide by 2, that's 160. Divide by 2, that's 80. Divide by 2, that's 40. Divide by 2, that's 20. Divide by 2, that's 10. Divide by 2, that's 5. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 2 to the 6th times 5. I've got the cubed root of 2 to the 6th times 5. Just treat it like the letters. Forget their numbers for a second. Treat it like the letters. How many times does 3 go into 6? Twice. So 2 of the 2's get to come out. 3 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. So that has to stay in. You've got 2 squared, which is 4, times the cube root of 5. And so what that tells me is 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. If I was going to break it down, I would have had to use 64. Cube root of 56. Cube root of 56. Fastest way is to know that 8 goes into 56. That's the fastest way. I pick 8 because it's one of my cube roots. No, I don't look at the square roots. I look at the cube roots. So the fastest way is to know that we can split that into the cube root of 8 times the cube root of 7. Cube root of 8 is 2. That's my answer. But if you don't know, okay, if you don't know what you're doing, you can split it up. 56. Divide by 2, you get 28. Divide by 2, you get 14. Divide by 2, you get 7. That's 2 to the 3rd times 7. And if I had to do a cubed root of that, 3 goes into 3 once, so a 2 comes out. 3 doesn't go into this 1, so a 7 stays in. There's my answer. Square root of 147. 140. Well, I think that's 49 times 3. That's going to be 7 times square root of 3. Square root of 252. Square root of 252. I don't know. I don't know 252. Okay, I don't know 252. Again, fastest way, figure out what goes into 252. I don't know, if I don't feel like it, do you know what goes into 252? What was the first number? 6, so that means 36. 252 divided by 36, you're saying is 7? Perfect. Okay, so if you know you can split it, do it. Otherwise, use the breakdown method. Okay, square root of 36 is 6. Going to have a 7 stay in there. Root 2 goes into 4 twice. Root 2 goes into 1. No, it doesn't. Root 2 goes into 2 one time. Answer. Okay, that's tough stuff.